Hi, I'm Reverend Jake Zabe, and welcome to Children's Bible Stories. Hello children, and welcome back to Children's Apocrypha Stories. Today we're going to be doing another story going through the Apocrypha. That's the books of the Bible that, well, they're not books of the Bible. In the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church, they think they're books of the Bible. But in the Lutheran Church, we treat the Apocrypha as books that are about the biblical characters that may be true, but they're not part of God's inspired word. So they may also not be true. With the Apocrypha stories, unless they say something that is different to what's in the Bible, then there's no reason to think they're not true. Now, in our last video, we did the story of Daniel and Bel, the naughty statue, and the priests of Bel that were sneaking food out of the temple. Now, today, we're going to be doing the next story, which is Daniel and the dragon. So, Daniel went along with King Cyrus again, and Daniel was trying to convince Cyrus to believe in the God of the Bible, that God was the only true living God. Now, with the story of Bel, the king had said to Daniel, well, Bel is real because he eats food. The statue eats food all the time. Yes, he's a statue, but he eats food. And Daniel had to show the king that it wasn't actually the statue eating the food, it was the priests of Bel eating the food and tricking the king. And now there was another creature that the Babylonians were worshipping. The Babylonians knew of this big dragon living in a cave. And the Babylonians would worship this dragon as if it was a god. And so the king said to Daniel, Daniel, how can you say that this dragon is not a true living god? Look, he's clearly alive. And the priests come and they bring him sacrifices of like sheep and stuff, and the dragon eats them all up. So how can you say that this dragon is not a living God? He's clearly living. And Daniel's argument with this was, well, the true living God is immortal, and he doesn't die. If I can kill this dragon, then that proves that he's not a god. And so the king said, well, okay, you can try. Daniel said, I'll kill the dragon with neither club nor sword. And if I can do that, that proves that he's not a god. And the king said, alright, go ahead, you can try it. And so Daniel, he got some hair and some fat and some oil, and he rubbed them together and made a little cake. And he took it and he gave it to the dragon. The dragon came and he ate up the big cake. And then what happened is the dragon got terribly sick. The dragon got sick and he died and his stomach burst open. And that was the end of the dragon. Daniel had won. He had proven that the dragon was not a god. But this wasn't the end of the story for poor Daniel. Because what happened is that all the priests and people who had worshipped the dragon, they were very angry with Daniel. And so they came to the king and they threatened him that if he didn't get rid of Daniel, that they were going to rebel and that they were going to kill the king and overthrow the kingdom. And the king, he was very scared. And so, you know what the king did? He went and he had Daniel thrown into the lion's den, where the lions were going to eat him. Now, the king probably should have learnt that last time Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, God kept him safe. So Daniel was probably going to stay safe this time as well. But the priests were a bit wiser this time. They knew Daniel wasn't going to be eaten by the lions. So they kept Daniel in there with no food for a very long time. So Daniel was in the lion's den for 6 days, and he was getting very hungry. He was starving, and he was probably going to die of hunger if he didn't get some food soon. But back in the land of Judea, there were some reapers out working in the fields, and the prophet Habakkuk had just made some bread and food for him, some stew, and he was bringing it out to feed the reapers for lunch. But as the prophet Habakkuk was going out, he was stopped by the angel of the Lord, Jesus, who came and said, "No, Daniel needs that food." And so he grabbed Habakkuk by his hair and he whisked him off all the way to Babylon. And so the angel of the Lord teleported Habakkuk in an instant to Babylon. And he came and he gave the food of bread and stew to Daniel, and Daniel ate it all up. Thank you, Habakkuk. And then Habakkuk had probably been there for only about 5 minutes, and the angel of the Lord, Jesus, came and grabbed him and whoosh, wished him off again. And then, on the 7th day, the king, he came running down to the lion's den to see if Daniel was still alive after a whole week. And Daniel came out, and he was. And the king was so happy that Daniel was still alive. And he shouted with a loud voice, "You are great, O Lord, the God of Daniel, and there is no other God besides you." And he took Daniel out of the lion's den, and then he went and he got all those naughty priests of the dragon who had threatened him, and he threw them into the lion's den, and they got eaten up instead. And that, children, then, is the story of Daniel and the dragon. And this would also be the story that would explain how Cyrus went from being a pagan king to worshipping the God of the Bible and sending all the Jews back from exile from Babylon all the way back to the land of Judah, as we read in the books of the end of 2nd Chronicles and also in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. So that's our story for today, children. I've been your host, Reverend Jake Zabel. Goodbye and God bless.